Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for a dynamic effort lower day, but a quick reminder for those of you who watch these videos, please remember to click like down below, be greatly appreciated. Something I think I want to do a little more of is have a little more specificity in my training. I still want to rotate everything, I want to run my bands, chains, speed work, but I'm going to go ahead and do a competition squat and just run bands and chains for these 5x5s. As you guys see here, I want to make sure that I get used to having this straight bar on my back. I want to hit depth. And that way my speed work keeps me in practice, because I really feel like I need to be doing max effort work kind of to the bleeding edge, and I don't have room for two in a workout if I do that. So I need to make sure at this point that I have high specificity on my dynamic work. So I want to use my competition versions of the lifts. And that's what I mostly want to do. I want to make sure I'm hitting depth, pausing on the benching, getting tight, getting the bar correct on my shoulders. So I want to do all these things. And I think a lot of my max effort work is going to do the same thing. I'll just rotate bands and chains around. And I think because I want to compete a lot this coming year, I want to get on the platform as many times as my scheduling allows for. This is probably the direction I need to go. And it kind of shows how we can take conjugate and we can make it very specific on what we're doing. Whereas in my combat athletes and things like that, I don't care about their specificity on this stuff at all, ever. My general strength people, it's almost random lifts. We don't care as long as they're maxing, they're exerting themselves, and I can look for their weak links coming out. But for my own training, I think this is kind of the direction I need to go. It's the direction I need to go, and I want to go. And then again, we can use tons of whatever I want for supplemental work. There's no need to even think about assistance at this point, because we're getting so much of it on max and speed work. Right, that's going to be the name of the game. So that being said, that's what we're going to do. And I kind of like this 5x5 protocol with the lighter weights. I like it quite a bit. And then that way I can focus on just hypertrophy across the board. I can focus purely upon hypertrophy and stimulus to fatigue and all the other stuff. And again, it's a good way to approach conjugate, and I think it will work very, very well. Plus, again, it lets me get more practice in on the competition lifts while still utilizing variation and accommodating resistance. So 5x5 on the deadlifts today, the first time doing that. And one of the things I'm doing on a lot of these is holding at the top, particularly near the ends of the sets. This is something I struggle to get clients to do on speed work, on speed pulls. A lot of times they don't even lock them out, and then they just come back down. And I'm trying to tell them, look, this is where a lot of your grip training is. Don't waste it. Get those lockouts. Get all the way back. Control it. So it's just something that can be a problem when it comes to speed work, when you're teaching your guys to move fast and be violent. A lot of people who don't have a lot of lifting experience, you'll see that they'll just short stroke their tops, particularly when bands or chains get into the mix. Now, for those curious why I'm not using chains, I went to set up chains on these, and it's just such a hassle and conventional to run the amount of chains I need for speed work that I'm like, should probably just stick with the bands for now. It doesn't give me as much variation, but we'll get that on the max work. And sooner or later I'll come up with a system, but the problem I run into is that when you start running over 100 pounds of chains, it's like your choice is it going to be on my feet and then I have to kick them aside each set, or is it going to risk them getting underneath the plates when you're doing fives? So if you're doing singles, it's not as bad. But with the fives, it's terribly impractical in some ways to try to do chains on conventional, particularly 25% of your max on chains. So putting 150 pounds of chains, not so much. All right, my quads were just literally on fire. Well, not literally, figuratively. Sorry about that. People will be like, oh, Blaha just lied again. He said his quads are on fire and there's no flames. He's such a liar. Okay, let's get back over to this. I took 20 pounds off on these so I could focus on trying to get a little deeper, because the range of motion and getting that stretch at the bottom matters. But between the speed work and then these, my quads were so destroyed that at like 2 sets I stopped. I have been pushing my prowler several times a week though, so that's probably a factor. My quads are getting a considerable amount of work there. But yeah, the first 2 sets of these, my quads were burning, and I'm like, oh, this is getting to be too much. I'm going to have to build this work capacity up on this stuff. I think particularly when we go from boxes to back squats on the speed work, because the quad stretch at the bottom was very intense. It wasn't really so much a pump as it was almost just feeling like the quads are ripping apart. It's just so much tension, right? And I have big quads, and so again, it creates a lot of tension there. So I want to be able to get that depth and everything, and I'm going to have to mitigate volumes enough to handle it and recover so that I don't get a tremendous amount of DOMs. And, of course, then we just bridge the gap on the volume with the prowler and sled work. All right, same thing with the glute ham raises. I've been a little worried about the cramps, so I'm doing just 2 sets so that I can really put my real volume into the reverse hyper extensions. But I notice I haven't been getting the cramps in my hamstrings now, really, but I also came off creatine because I've read enough that oftentimes apparently that's a factor. Even though I'm hydrated, plenty of potassium, magnesium, well past the RDA on those. I probably get double the RDA on both of those every day. Drink lots of water, so it's not a hydration issue. But the creatine does seem to be a factor in my hamstring cramps. Kind of sucks because I want the health benefits of it, but it is what it is. All right, we get to the reverse hypers. I wanted to work my volumes up on these, but I also need to get stronger again. So I wanted to add a plate, and it made it so much more challenging that I didn't do 10 sets. I just did 6. Keeping in mind I did 8 sets this last time with 450. So I went up to 495 by adding another plate, and I stopped at 6 sets of 10 because I felt like the training stimulus was really good. But I'm also not going to increase weight on this again until I get to 10 sets of 10. So as I said in the last couple of vlogs, what I really would like to do is put the real volume into the movements that have this almost anti-fatigue situation because they're prehab type movements. They're restoration-based movements in their own way, and that's like the band press downs, the reverse hypers. So I want to do a lot more volume on those. And, I might take the same approach with some band pull-aparts and stuff too, just for my rear delts, right? Again, let's just work all that posterior stuff, because the same thing, can we really have rear delts that are too strong? Would it be a good idea to get the tendons, healthier in that area, right? Wouldn't be a bad idea. But again, the reverse hyper, you guys know how I feel about this. I feel like the reverse hyper has contributed to my deadlift strength more than anything else. Anytime I cut the reverse hypers out, I regress. Anytime I add it back in, my deadlifts start climbing. And I've noticed that, quite frankly, it's the higher volumes of this that work. Even when I cut back to the 3 sets a while back, I felt like, particularly there was diet involved. But before I got sick and the mold situation and everything hit, I felt like the deadlift had regressed just a tiny hair. And maybe it was trying to do 3 sets on these instead of 5 twice a week. But when I really had pushed these up, remember I ran that phase before my deadlift started climbing way past up into the 600s again, where I built up to 10 sets of these, like 10 sets of 10. On the older reverse hyper. So I'm not sure the math carries over as completely because this one feels more challenging, the Rogue one does. But you guys get the idea. It seems to really do a tremendous amount for my deadlift. It also helps one of my weakest links in the squat, and that tends to be that chest cave. That's what gets me at meets when I get stapled on a squat, right? I'm not able to support the weight correctly with my low back and everything. It ends up causing chest caving and everything else. This seems to alleviate that considerably, right? I mean, the belt squats and the sled work will build the musculature and of course the speed squats for all the primary movers, but then it comes to the ability to stabilize that load and to be able to support a heavy max load. Well, I think this is going to help with that, and it does help with it because I see it every time. I've watched the differences in my lifts of when I've been doing a large amount of reverse hypers versus very small amounts or none, and we see it. So we need to work on it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.